On the reaction here in Australia as another pro-Palestinian rally gets underway in Melbourne. It comes after shocking anti-Semitic chants broke out on the steps of the Sydney Opera House last night, drawing widespread condemnation.
There is no place for anti-Semitism. There is no place for hatred and prejudice.
Shock.
We saw the scenes of violence, of burning of flags, of chanting explicitly about Jews, not just about Israel.
Anger.
To have some people celebrate atrocious, indiscriminate killing and kidnapping in Israel is appalling.
Condemnation.
It is un-Australian to attack someone because of what God they worship. Let's call it what it is. There's anti-Semitism.
A pro-Palestinian protest on the steps of the Sydney Opera House last night.
I'm very upset that also Israelis have died, okay? However, there have been thousands of Palestinians who have been dying for the past 54 years under this occupation.
Peaceful until it was hijacked by extremists, chanting vile anti-Semitic slurs.
They were shocking and despicable, and I thought some of the chants and slogans that the crowd was shouting last night amount to racial incitement.
A man wielding an Israeli flag arrested, then released. The police say for his own safety.
I just can't reconcile that with the fact that other people that were doing what they were doing have the right to be where they were, and yet I was told I need to leave the CBD.
This is not about us condoning, supporting, facilitating any protest. This is about us providing for the public safety.
When I see those kids coming out of that rubble, I feel my kids are dying. What about lighting up a building for us? A 14-year-old boy was set on fire in the West Bank by Israeli settlers. What about us?
Today, Jewish schools bolstering security amid fears for the safety of the community.
I've had parents and mothers checking in to see if we feel safe sending our kids to school, keeping Jews away from the Opera House and instead allowing hate speech to occur makes you really scared, and it's sad that this is our Australia.
A conflict raging in the Middle East, now crashing upon Australian shores.
I want to urge all Australians to maintain respect for one another. We're a country that people want to come to because we are tolerant, we are respectful, we are peaceful.
So, the Palestine Action Group in Sydney have released a statement which I think it's important for us to provide to you. It reads, and this is in part, despite a very successful and peaceful rally, the media has reported on a tiny fringe, we estimate less than 20 people, the vile anti-Semitic attendees who showed up to the Opera House. Media reports show young boys, mostly in their teens, chanting. From our observations, this occurred for less than 1 minute and was not an ongoing chant. They were quickly condemned for their chants and asked to leave. And then it goes on later to say, this is not what our movement stands for. We oppose Zionism, an ideology distinct from Judaism. This in a nutshell is the difficulty, because I never know what to do in these situations when protests have things like that happen. We've seen, for example, neo-Nazi groups turn up to protest in Melbourne.
Yep.
In other things, nothing to do with this, protests that we've seen, even Dan Andrews-related protests. And they are always a small number. And in this case, we can only go on, we can't verify this, we can only go on what they've said, that it was less than a minute. But if that's true, it's a massive thing to have happened, and it's very significant. But by reporting on it, do you turn it into something that's bigger than it actually is?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be upfront here. I don't know the answer to that. I've never been able to figure out the answer to that as someone who works in media. Because you can't bury.
No.
But you can't enlarge.
But the problem also started before that, when Jews were told not to go to the Opera House. So that's already the start.
By a Jewish community organisation.
Yes, but it's a problem, and probably rightly so.
Yeah. Well, you could understand why they would say that, right? Yeah.
Sure.
But you're saying that by covering it, in which you do have to do, but sometimes that can then make...
Yeah, and I just don't know the way through it. So, Jewish Australians have my utmost sympathy for how they would feel hearing that.
Yes.
That cannot and should never be denied, that would be real. At the same time, if what the Palestinian Action Group is saying here is correct, their frustration would be palpable too, because they're trying to make a point that's not about that at all.
Yes,
and somewhere in between this, a conversation, it seems, becomes impossible because other things just take over.
And if it was a group of young teens, well, there's a problem for the future.
Well, possibly, yeah.